this recording. Perfect, you guys. Well, thank you both for being here and making the time today. This is Reach Cultural Stories, and this month we're highlighting veterans. So we are so excited to have both of you, and we have our lovely moderator, John, here. So I'm going to let him lead you guys through this convo, and I'll tap back in at the end.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Ellie. Josh, Lloyd, so happy you guys are able to be here. It's always a pleasure to speak with a couple fellow veterans, and we can really have a great conversation and share our stories with everybody. But if we could do just a little roundtable introductions of who you are and what you currently do. Lloyd, would you like to kick us off, please?
Definitely. My name is Lloyd Felix, and I am currently a regional vice president for Family Dollar Dollar Tree. Just transitioned this week. Originally from Belize, a little small country in Central America. Grew up in the Bronx, and I've got a 16-year-old son that keeps me pretty busy.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being with us, Lloyd. And you're a veteran as well, correct?
Yeah, sorry about that. United States Army veteran, served coming straight out of college, got out as a captain, military intelligence officer, branch detail, field artillery. 2 tours in Iraq.
Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for being with us. Josh.
Hi, Josh Javen. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Travis Manion Foundation. I served 20 years in the Marine Corps, my first 12 on active duty, and then 8 years in the reserves.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us, Josh. My name is Jonathan Sweetman. I'm one of the senior account managers with Diverse Talent. Lloyd, I'm going to join you on your side. I am an Army veteran. I did 3 tours overseas as a U.S. Scout. So pleasure to have you guys here. So we'll go ahead and kick this off with the first question. Remember, this will be a free-form discussion. So if the conversation trails one way, we can go down that path. So first question, how did you imagine military life before you joined? And how did your perception change after serving? Josh, we'll start with you.
Sure. So my brother had joined the Navy before I joined the Marine Corps. So I think I had some idea of what I was getting myself into, but I was looking for a challenge. I was a wrestler in high school. Then I went to the Naval Academy where I was on the wrestling team. And I was really looking for that next challenge, and the Marine Corps was it for me. I really wanted to travel the world. My brother, his first duty station was 4 years in Japan, and I really wanted to get more exposure out there. I grew up in New Jersey, and I wanted to see something other than the East Coast of the United States. And just looking out, I was looking for that next opportunity for myself. And I'll say the Marine Corps delivered on all counts. In my 20 years in the Marine Corps, I did a tour in Okinawa, Japan for a couple of years. I did a bunch of traveling around Asia when I was young, before wife and children. So I got to experience that culture. Certainly got to meet people from all over the United States, all different ethnicities and cultures, people all around the world. I got to spend a year in Iraq and meet some Iraqis that were our allies when we were fighting in Operation Iraqi Freedom. So definitely delivered on being challenging, on giving me that opportunity to travel the world and meet people different than myself, and certainly gave me opportunity.
Absolutely. Lloyd, how about yourself? How did you imagine military life before you joined, and how did your perception change after you joined?
Yeah, very great question. The military for my family is somewhat the family business. So I joined the family business. My dad served in the military when we immigrated to this country, and he used the military as his springboard to provide stability and progress for us as he was achieving the American dream. So my perception was really based off of how I grew up. My dad had a job. It required him to wear a uniform, and sometimes he went to the field for a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, or fortunately for me, the time period that I joined the Army made my experience a little bit different than that. My 5 years in the military, 4 of those years I was deployed. So my perception of what the military meant, what the military did, definitely changed post joining the military, just based off of that time period.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's so interesting, Josh and Lloyd, the way you share your stories about why you joined and kind of what you're looking for and what you got out of it, really shapes who you are today and some of the path decisions that you've made sense. That leads us into our next question. What are the most challenging aspects of civilian life you see affecting veterans? And is there anything there, or is there anything anyone can do, um, or resources to help people out in those transitions?
I'll start off with that one. I think that a lot of the challenges that veterans face in the civilian world revolve around transitioning from the military into the civilian world. The resource that I would like to offer to veterans is people who have walked that path before you. As I think about my transition from the military to the civilian sector in corporate America, I wish I would have utilized people from my school that went through ROTC that were 2, 3, 4 years ahead of me, that could have given me some perspective in regards to here's how you can navigate that a little bit easier. Here's some things that you need to be on the lookout for as you interview or as you create your resume, in order to bridge that gap and have your skill set and your experience translate into the civilian world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great advice, Lloyd. I think that transition for all of us is difficult for different reasons. The thing that the advice that I would give to veterans is not to just focus on the next job. I think that as we go through that transition assistance program, as we're getting out, we all have to put food on the table. Many of us have children and mortgages, and we focus on that job. But for me and so many of the veterans that I work with today through Travis Manion Foundation, the real challenge is the loss of sense of identity, the loss of sense of purpose, the loss of that sense of community and camaraderie. I joined the Marine Corps in May 2001. I was at the basic school on September 11th, and just like Lloyd, I got to deploy a lot those first few years, and we were country at war, and I was Josh the Marine, and I knew every day that I woke up with that sense of purpose, defending my country. The camaraderie that's built into the Marine Corps. The year that I spent in Iraq, I mean, you'll never get closer to a group of Marines than when you're deployed to Iraq for a year, and then you get off active duty, and that's really hard to replicate in whatever you do from there. And so having that idea of how do you want to continue to serve, what is that next community? That's what we offer at Travis Manion Foundation, but there's lots of different communities for people. I mean, some people it's their church or their temple or their mosque. It's whatever religious group they identify with. For others, it's their fitness community. I know people that are CrossFitters, and to them that's my wife is very into fitness, and that's her sense of community and how she gives back by being a fitness trainer. For me, it's Travis Manion Foundation. But whatever that community is and that way that you continue to serve, think about that before you make that transition. It's not just about getting the next job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to piggyback off that one real quick, I think that's an excellent point, Josh, because the military puts you in a position where your purpose and identity exists externally. So much of it shows up in your uniform, what you call yourself, and things of that nature. And that transition to civilian world requires us to look internally for that purpose and who we are, refocus where we're at in regards to who we are as a person. So I think that's an excellent point, Josh. Thank you.
Yeah. Josh, and I'm going to echo both of you. You guys absolutely nailed it. My curiosity, Lloyd, you're in the for-profit space, right? And the mission isn't working with or serving veterans. I mean, how did this show up for you when you transitioned out?
It showed up for me in the same way that a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives show up for me. It's all about putting leaders, organizations, and people in a position to meet others where they're at. Not assume, not project, not think that we know everything about a veteran because we watched Generation Kill or we watched a couple of movies, but genuinely existing with that person to understand where they're at, understand their experience, and see how our leadership or the resources that we can offer applies to them. That may be in the form of meeting one veteran in the corporate America space that may be struggling with mental health issues, and having that open dialogue with that individual and being able to guide that individual towards both company provided resources and resources that exist through the government and VA and things of that nature. So for me, although it's not I don't work for organizations that directly impact veterans, I am very passionate about ensuring that every organization that I'm a part of gets better about interacting with veterans going forward, based off of how I interact with them and what I share with them in regards to the veteran population.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a great thing about that is you yourself become that resource to the people that are transitioning out. I think Josh and Lloyd, you both shared, reaching out to someone who's like ahead of you, who's kind of been there, done that. And that's you guys, and that's, veterans that have made those steps. And we become those resources, even in a place, that's a for-profit company, for example.
I think also wearing that veteran badge proud. When younger veterans or people that are just getting out are able to connect with me in a store on my travels and things of that nature, and I'm unapologetic about being a veteran, they have a connection point. They have a baseline to say, okay, he's gone through it before and he seems like he has it together. So maybe if I'm struggling, that's a person I can reach out to. So really being transparent and unapologetic about you being a veteran and your journey to get to where you're at currently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what advice do you have for individuals who plan to join the military? And what advice do you have for individuals who are about to leave the military? Just both ends of it.
So for individuals joining the military, my last active duty station, I had the opportunity to go back to the Naval Academy, and I was teaching midshipmen, and I love to give advice to people right before they start their career. And I would always tell them, take advantage of every opportunity. The military offers so many opportunities. And, my first duty station, I got sent out to Okinawa, Japan. And some of my Marines would do their job and they'd go back to the barracks and had no interest in going into town or exploring or seeing what the Okinawan culture was all about, or visiting other countries. They would just stay on base and complain because the food wasn't as good, on base as like the McDonald's back at home. And they didn't even try to go out and experience Okinawa, which is a beautiful country with lots of great scuba diving and lots of culture and close to other great countries. And, me and some of my friends, like every weekend we were out there scuba diving. We were trying restaurants and trying the local food and traveling to other countries and trying to meet people and see where they ate and what they did. And, and I think like you have to understand that you're not in America anymore, and you have this great opportunity in front of you, and take advantage of whatever the military offers you. That's my advice to somebody going into the military. Don't, I grew up in New Jersey. The last thing I wanted to do was get stationed on the East Coast. I wanted to go see something completely different than what I grew up with. And that's my advice, is get out of your comfort zone, get out of wherever you grew up, go as far away as possible and go experience their culture.
I agree with that 100%. The only thing I would add on to that is be present with the people and individuals that you're serving with as well. The military provides an environment unlike any other place that I've been in before. You will be roommates, you will be squad mates, platoon mates with people from around the world, people from around the country, people who have thoughts that directly oppose the way that you were brought up and the way that you think. And all those things are so enriching if you just let them be enriching. And it just requires you to be present in those moments. It requires you to humble yourself and put your ego in your pocket to understand someone else's perspective in order for it to enrich your life and enrich your ability to connect with others. So I would definitely agree with Josh on that. I think exiting the military, the advice that I would give is plan it.
Mm.
A lot of times people exit the military with no semblance of a strategy or a plan. I think that just like everything else in life, sitting down with yourself, your loved ones, mentors, peers, anything of that nature, and really developing a plan and strategy that can help guide you through that transition is critically important as you're exiting the military. Whether you do it on an individual basis or you partner with a agency that can help you transition a little bit better as well. I think that that planning and strategy piece is critically important as you transition.
I'll agree with Lloyd and say the plan. And when you start that planning process, I think it starts with figuring out what are you passionate about and what is that impact that you want to have. You know, John, your question before to Lloyd, you know, he's not in a nonprofit, right? Like I get to have an impact on veterans every day. I'm also passionate about mentoring youth, and I get to do that through Travis Manion Foundation. That's our main program, is training veterans to mentor youth. That is my passion in life. But there's lots of great opportunities. You know, Lloyd talked about some of the things that he's passionate about, and he can find that in his job. People, the impact that we want to have, you just got to go find it, whether it's in your day job, whether it's where you volunteer, whether you can bring it to your day job. You know, maybe you're passionate around being an Eagle Scout leader. Maybe you want to be the coach of a sports team. There's so many great ways to make an impact, but to start that planning process, like Lloyd talked about, by saying, you know, I can do whatever I want to in this next chapter. I'm not limited to anything. You know, maybe I was a mechanic in the Army or the Marine Corps. You don't have to be a mechanic. Maybe you love it and you want to keep doing it. But if not, go do something else. But think about, what is that impact that I want to have? And then go figure out how you can make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate both of your advice to people as they're coming in and exiting. I like the note about when you go into the military, be purposeful and take advantage of all the opportunities, the culture opportunities, the world travel opportunities, but as well as like the schooling that you can get inside of the military, and being present and putting your ego aside. And I think, and I see both you nodded, there's plenty of opportunities where that ego gets put aside. You're wearing the same uniform, you're crawling in the same dirt. At no point does your clothes, your car, your house, these status things, all that becomes nothing, right? And you really get to be present, get to know people. And if I could add some value, that's a skill set that you get from that environment that you get to bring in those interactions that you have with other people, you know, that raw human to human connection. So I appreciate everything you guys have just shared. We'll move on to our next question. What are the most common mental health challenges that veterans face, and how can they effectively be addressed?
I'll jump in, and from my experience, in the most common mental health issues I see with veterans revolve around PTSD, anxiety, and depression. They are real. We have to acknowledge them in order to make improvements on them. So I think that my advice in regards to resources would be, first, internally, being able to acknowledge that the experiences that you have had or may have had through the military have had an impact on you. Unfortunately or fortunately, when in the military, there are certain things that have to be muted in order to accomplish the mission. Things don't need to stay like that all the time. So you have to acknowledge that you've done some hard things, you've seen some hard things, and you may need some help. So connecting with buddies is critically important. I think that always remaining in some form of communication or connection with others that have served puts you in a position to have an outlet to release some pressure that exists in all of us that have served. Outside of that, this may be a little bit controversial for some who have dealt with the VA, but the VA is a resource to help with those type of issues. Yes, it can be frustrating. Yes, you may have to be diligent and gritty in order to navigate the process. But I can tell you from experience that the VA is there to help you. So utilizing the VA and utilizing your buddies are two things that I think are critically important for veterans to understand and realize as they navigate mental health issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Lloyd is right. I mean, when you think about mental health and you think about the suicide problem that we have right now, the suicide rate for veterans is just too high. It's much higher than our civilian counterparts, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Lloyd points out some of them based on our military experience, post-traumatic stress for many. But what I'll add to that, so yes to everything Lloyd said, and I'll add, think about how you address those proactively. Don't wait for something to become a crisis. I think too often we deny what we're feeling. We pretend like it's not happening, or the same with the people that are around us. We think, well, they're just having a bad day, they'll get over it, or it's just normal what they're experiencing. And there are proactive ways to address these things. The Surgeon General just came out a month ago and said that loneliness is an epidemic. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people isolated themselves and are experiencing loneliness. If you look at what are some of the biggest risk factors for suicide, loneliness is one of the top ones. Loss of sense of purpose is one of the top ones. So while those become risk factors, they're also protective factors. So if you have that sense of purpose, like Lloyd and I were both talking about before, if you know that thing that you're passionate about, that you want to have the impact on, whether it's improving diversity and inclusion, whether it's mentoring youth, whether it's helping veterans and mentoring veterans, whether it's coaching, whether it's whatever it is, if you have that sense of purpose, if you have that community around you, if you're proactively talking to therapists at the VA or other sources, I'll tell you that our partners at Wounded Warrior Project also offer no cost, high quality mental health care for post 9/11 veterans. We have all sorts of great partnerships in the space. There's certainly not a lack of resources towards this problem, but it starts with veterans identifying these things early, or battle buddies helping and family members helping to identify these things early and saying, hey, like, having anxiety is normal, but don't wait for that anxiety to become crippling when you're in crisis.
Right.
Let's attack it right away. You would, if you had a physical problem, you would go to the doctor right away. It's the same with mental health, and I would just say be proactive about these issues.
Yeah. You guys both, you absolutely nailed it. There is a high suicide rate. I think it's 21 a day, something like that. I believe the suicide rate it's huge. And I'd love to hear both your perspective. What's the barrier to veterans? What stops us personally, internally, right, from going out and tapping in to those great resources? Because it takes courage, but what's that barrier?
Say pride and ego, John. Yeah, plain and simple pride and ego. I think attachment to what we thought we were or what we had to do in order to get through those tough times is exactly what puts us in a position to hold on to tough situations longer than we need to. The minute that you put the pride and ego aside and realize that you are a human being that has emotions, feelings, thoughts, and memories, the easier it becomes to advocate for yourself and put yourself in a position to receive help. Post getting out of the military, I held on to that warrior mantra for way too long. I'm Captain Felix. I can get through everything. I'm like a duck with water. It just doesn't affect me. Meanwhile, my mental well-being wasn't at optimum condition. It wasn't at optimum health. Looking back on it, interacting with my parents and loved ones, they felt my anxiety and stress. But the minute I put my ego aside and said, it's okay to not be okay, that's when things started to turn and get better for me, and put me in a position to really utilize my full bandwidth and feel like I was moving towards realizing my full potential. So I think that pride and ego are the biggest things that have to be tucked away in order for us to get after those resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense, Lloyd. I mean, we're all proud. We all think of ourselves as here to serve others, and we don't prioritize ourselves. You know, I'll add to that. I think just the lack of information, a lack of knowledge about this topic of mental health. You know, I don't think that people think of mental health in the terms that I'm saying. You know, I think they know what it looks like in crisis, but they don't think of it as having the sense of purpose and having that community. And they don't, you know, they think of these things as nice to have. Oh, it's nice to go out and do volunteer work or to coach my kid's sports team. That's nice to have. And I'm telling you, it's critically important that you have that, you know, having that sense of community, whether it's at church or your fitness group or, you know, an organization like Travis Manion Foundation, a strong group at work, whatever that group is, that's not nice to have. That's critically important. These are very important steps that you have to take. And here's what I'll tell veterans, because I agree with Lloyd. I think we're all proud. We all serve others. So if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for others. Because if you're part of that community, you can help identify when other people are off or when other people are experiencing high anxiety, and you can help them to get into the help they need. You know, these things, they feel abnormal to us, but here's what I'll tell you: it's normal. I have a therapist. You know, my family members all have therapists. Most of my friends have therapists. Many of us take medicine to help us through anxiety or depression. Or there's nothing wrong with any of these things. They're normal. That's true for veterans. That's true for non-veterans. It's true for all people. It's just normal. So don't feel ashamed. There's no hit to your pride of saying, I have anxiety, I have depression. Mm-hmm. Most of us do. So let's address it and let's get better.
I think there was a lot of power in that statement, Josh, and I just want to echo that so that anyone listening can hear me say it as well. I have a therapist, and that's perfectly okay. My therapist makes me better. I would also like to offer everyone the common analogy that we've all seen. When you're on a plane and something happens, you don't put someone else's oxygen mask on first. You put your own on first so that you can help someone else. So I think that as we look at mental health, as we look at how we put ourselves in a better space, like, it's not selfish to start with yourself. You have to start with yourself and then cascade that to others.
Absolutely. You know, Lloyd, Josh, you both have shared a tremendous amount of wisdom on this issue. It's a heavy issue. And just that, you know, it's the pride, the ego that came from hard training, right, in order to get the mission done, and how you can only have that for so long, right? And then seeking out the community and the resources, putting on your mask first, so that way you can help others. You know, that you guys both absolutely nailed it. On our next question, is there anything you wish civilians understood more about military service and or veterans?
It's not a one size fits all. A lot of times I think that when interacting with civilians, they see a movie, they have one experience in regards to the military, and they think that translates to everyone that they've seen in the military. The military is a broad spectrum of different functional areas, different jobs, different experiences, and things of that nature. So like I alluded to initially, it's critically important that you meet each individual where they are at. You're going to talk to one veteran that had nothing but years of hardcore combat, and you're going to talk to another veteran that didn't deploy anywhere. And both are okay. Both have different experiences, both have different challenges and different ways that we can show up for those individuals in order to ensure that we're being good teammates for one another. So I think that not having that one size fits all approach is critically important. And then I also think that tempering curiosity with respect is important in regards to civilians interacting with veterans. A lot of times when people hear, I'll use myself, for example, a lot of my time in service was spent in combat. And a lot of the questions that I receive sometimes are insensitive. They're curious, but they're insensitive questions. They're triggering questions. I'm grateful that I'm at a point now where I can pause those individuals and walk them through, like, do you realize what you really just asked me? Are you really comfortable with asking someone that, or would you rather take that back and let's talk about something else? So I think that tempering your curiosity with respect is important as well.
Yeah.
Lloyd's first point was the same point I was going to make, which is that, veterans are just normal people and we're representative of the larger population. I think a lot of times people who don't know veterans, who don't have a close family member or close friend who is a veteran, they believe the stereotypes of veterans, and they believe that we're all broken or we're all heroes, right? It's like one extreme or the other. And there's probably some truth to both of those, for each of us. I mean, I think a lot of us have done some good things during our time in service. Some of us struggle in different areas, but we all have come from different experiences. We all have different opinions. I see like all the time people say, well, veterans believe this, political point of view, or veterans support this candidate. I mean, we are representatives of the bigger population, and we have our own thoughts and our own experiences. And there is no one veteran mold that we all, become.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with both of you. Lloyd, I want to relate to your question about or your comment about receiving questions that aren't maybe well thought through, and each service person has a different reaction to those things, and so I think that's a great piece of advice for folks out there that haven't been a trigger puller in that situation, to make sure that if you really want to know, it's like, yeah, okay, check your relationship you have and ask if that's a safe spot to walk into. Like, hey, I got this heavy, deep question about what you might have done. Is it okay if I ask something like that? And that's a great piece of advice. And to Josh, your point, you're right. The military is full of a lot of people that have all kinds of different ideas. We're good at being one team, one fight. We can most certainly do that when it comes to the objective, right? But when it comes to our personal identities, we're just like everybody else. We all like different food and music, and political stuff as well. Our next question: what are some of your most memorable experiences, either as a veteran or working or in the workplace? So what's a memorable experience that you have when you were serving or as a veteran, as it kind of falls into that umbrella?
For me, I'm sorry, Lloyd, did you want to jump in? For me, when I think of my time in the Marine Corps, I think of the Marines that I served alongside. I mean, it was an incredible group that I had the privilege to serve with. Like I said earlier, being in Iraq for the year, that will always go down as my most memorable experience in the Marine Corps for many reasons. I'm very proud of my service. I'm very proud that I was in a position to defend my country. But the Marines that I had the opportunity to spend a year with, and when you're deployed, like, there's no weekends, right? There's no like going home at the end of the day. Like, you're together for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For us, it was for 365 days, and you just get to know each other and rely on each other in a way that's just, it's hard to do that anywhere else. I mean, I played sports growing up, but I'm sure John, Lloyd, most veterans do. So I'm sure you both played sports growing up. I mean, it's like that feeling, but times 100, right? When you're just like so embedded with each other and there. So to me, like, that's what I think of as the highlight of my Marine Corps career, is just the Marines that I had the privilege of leading and serving alongside of.
I'll start mine with post-military. My proudest moment post-military was delivered by a young lady named Sarah. working in one of our stores. And quite frankly, I didn't know that she was a veteran either. But through interaction and sharing in a store visit, I was able to share that I was a veteran, served in the 3rd ACR, went to war a couple of times. And I didn't know that she was listening. Didn't know that she was paying attention. She was just another person in the audience. 6 months later, I was touring that store again, and I got to link up with Sarah in her area. And she looked at me, forgive me, I might get a little bit emotional, but she looked at me and she told me that 6 months ago, I saw you and I realized that me being broken was a choice. That if he's not broken, I don't have to be broken. And I committed from that day forward that I wasn't going to stay stuck and I was going to get better day after day. I didn't do anything. All I did was share who I was. All I did was authentically show up as Lloyd Felix, and that equaling someone else feeling better about themselves and improving their life in the span of 6 months meant the world to me. And I'll always carry that one with me. In the military, much like Josh, serving with those soldiers, learning from different leaders and soldiers, I can't pick one moment. There's just so many different moments that just stick out into my mind that impact me on a daily basis, whether it's Sergeant Negron, rest in peace, teaching me or showing me the impact of me as a leader making an effort as I walk through the area to say hello to everybody, and him telling me what that meant to the soldiers and how that impacted their mind frame and things of that nature. Like, those are the moments that stick with me and will always stick with me for the rest of my life.
So I'll add post-military, I think similar to Lloyd, what I do now through Travis Manion Foundation is I'm a veteran mentor teaching character and leadership. That's our program. We call it Character Does Matter. And we use examples of people that demonstrate character. Because when I think about that last story that Lloyd just shared, that's what I take away from my time of service is all about character, and it's about leadership, right? Like, you learn these things about moral courage, not just being brave and running out, exposing ourselves to fire, but moral courage, what it's like to stick up for somebody else who needs it. What the concept of integrity, right? Like doing the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. I think about all that's what I take away from my time in service. You think about kindness, right? Like, not something you think of with a Marine, but that's like one of the greatest lessons that I have is about kindness. It's about fairness. All these concepts that you learn, it's about taking all these people that are different than you and have those different opinions like we spoke about, and being able to have a conversation and just listen to each other. Just think about something that maybe you hadn't thought of before. These are the lessons that I take away. And these are the lessons that we share with the next generation in our role as veteran mentors. And we get to do it by using a lot of examples of fallen heroes. So one of the fallen heroes that I like to talk about all the time was Travis Manion. He was my friend. He and I wrestled together at Navy. We served together in the Marine Corps. He spoke 5 words before he went on his second and final tour of duty when asked why he had to go back. And he replied, "If not me, then who?" And those are 5 powerful words. And those are the words that we talk to kids about and say, if not me, then who? It's all about living a life of service, putting other people's needs in front of your own. And if we all do that on a daily basis, right? If we look for those if not me, then who moments to think about, who's that kid sitting alone at the lunch table? Can I go sit with that kid and just make him feel good, make him or her feel good about whatever? Can I help my next door neighbor with taking in the groceries or pick up that piece of trash that everybody else has walked by? Those little moments that you have out there, we all have them every single day. Using those words, if not me, then who? Honor my friend Travis, honor our fallen heroes by committing to live that life of service and living those 5 words. To me, like, that's the legacy, post-military that I want to leave for the next generation, including my own children.
Right. Josh and Lloyd, I mean, you sharing, I mean, you both giving me goosebumps. I'm sure everybody else that's listened, there's a tremendous amount of wisdom and insight that we can all translate into our lives. And Lloyd, I want to share that story you shared about that young lady that heard you just mention that you had served, and how that inspired her that you don't have to, you're not broken. I don't have to be broken, right? I mean, that was just, I don't know. I'm just going to have to sit and ponder all these things, and meditate on them. And I want to just say thank you for sharing those things. We do have a question here from the audience. I'm going to pull it up here. In your time in service, what was this is more of a fun question. In your time in service, what was the most interesting place you traveled to or culture you experienced, and why?
So during our time of service, it doesn't have to be an actual deployment.
During your time of service, doesn't have to, if you want to attach, a story of levity, we'd all love to hear it.
So when I was stationed on Okinawa for 2 years, a lot of people decided to, go home for Christmas, go back to the States. And I get that, a lot of people, they're away from home the first time, but me and 2 other Marines decided for 2 weeks to go through Vietnam and Cambodia. And, gosh, that was an eye-opening experience for me. I mean, just seeing how people live completely different than the way that I grew up, and truly changed my outlook. Made me appreciate so much more some of the things that we had, but also appreciate their culture and the way they lived. I mean, sometimes, I was watching this group of kids when we were in Vietnam, and they had like this one ball. And I mean, there must be this pack of 30 kids running around the yard chasing this one ball. And I just kept thinking in my head about like all the stuff that we have in our country, and we're still complaining about stuff. And I almost like was jealous of these kids that they were just had this joy with, and they had, so much less, but it didn't matter to them. They had this joy about what they had, and, just really changed my perspective. So, I love that trip. I think about that trip often. I got to travel all around Asia, and it's such a beautiful part of the world. But that trip in particular really, really changed the way I think at a very young age.
I think for me, 2 things come to mind. Much like Josh said, just travel in general. I think about some of the nicer moments during my deployment of being in some random village in Iraq, and the village just being so happy and ecstatic to see us there, and them coordinating to slaughter a goat because our unit was going to be there for a while, and they wanted to feed us and show us their culture. And yeah, those type of memories and those type of pictures flashed in my head as well. But one of the funner moments, to provide a little bit of levity, is I was a part of, I believe, the last exercise from Korea to Vladivostok, Russia, called Neptune Thunder, where we put some artillery pieces on some Navy ships and did a joint exercise with some other nations out there. The amount of work that you can get done in the military while still having fun after 1,800 hours with your peers is absolutely amazing. Some of those days I have no idea how I woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning. No clue.
Great stories. And I bet we could spend, we'll have to meet again and do a whole hour just swapping stories for everybody to hear and pop into. But let me hop into another question from the audience. Let's see here. Oh, here's a good one. What advice would you give someone who wants to become a leader in their organization? What are the first steps to becoming a mentor to others? So leadership and mentor. Somebody wants to become a mentor and a leader. What are some first good concrete steps they could take?
Number one for me is you got to be able to mentor and lead yourself, first and foremost. So occupying the position, like, that's the icing on the cake. The actual cake is, are you able to mentor and lead the various voices and things that we have going on internally inside of ourselves? Is step number one. And then step number two is realizing that leadership is not a position to attain. It's a space to occupy. So you could be a brand new team member on a team and still find a space where you're the leader. Maybe you're the one person that gets the most effectiveness out of this one process that only happens for 10 minutes a day. Doesn't matter. Lead that 10-minute process. Flex your might during that 10-minute process. to kind of prove yourself, but build the muscle, and then partner and connect with someone else in your organization that could help you provide the structure to branch that out a little bit. But number one is starting with yourself.
That's great advice, Lloyd. I'll piggyback off that second point, especially. In order to be a leader, all you need is for one person to follow you. You don't need to be voted the team captain. You don't have to be, the president of your unit or some other title, like Lloyd was saying. You just need to inspire one person, influence one person. So just think about your sphere of influence and what you can do to set the example and to inspire one other person. And then you build out from there. Just get started. I mean, we all three of us, we studied leadership right during our time in the military. I mean, that's such a big part of being in the military is learning about leadership and experiencing it and thinking about your leaders and what you like and don't like and trying things out. But for someone just getting started, just go get started. Just be that leader for one person, and then start thinking about these things. And I promise you, your sphere of influence will grow.
One thing I absolutely appreciate about what you both shared is it's universal wisdom, it's universal insight, but lead yourself first, right? So I'm gonna take it from Lloyd to start here. I remember going through training, and or even when you had a new soldier, right? Why is it such a big deal that your boots are laced up correctly? Why is it such a big deal that your uniform is square, right? Right? Or the corners on your bunk or your weapon is, clean to standard, right? Why is that so important? You're leading yourself first. And once you've mastered that, then you're able to step in and lead one other person, right? And then you go, team, squad, section, on up, right? And so everything you both shared transfers very much from the military experience, but is equally valuable and relevant in our civilian lives. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And I think it's also important to stay in that mindset. I've been in corporate America for a long time now, but I still feel the way that I felt when I was a 17-year-old young man accepting my ROTC scholarship. I don't know anything about leadership. I don't know anything about leadership. So I remain a student. I always am looking for ways or things that can improve my leadership, and always understanding that leading is not a static thing. It's a dynamic task. Things are always changing. So if you want to stay relevant, then you've always got to stay a student.
No, that's brilliant. You're absolutely right. It's not a static activity. I agree with you 1,000%. And lastly here, do you have a book, podcast, magazine, a tool technique recommended for veterans to tap into? Or we can go beyond veterans, because I just think that we've moved into just advice for all kinds of folks, but anything relevant for veterans, from veterans, that could be of value to others that you use or listen to or read right now.
I'll promote what we do at Travis Manion Foundation, because I think a lot of times it's about experiencing things alongside of veterans. I think it's great. There's lots of great books and podcasts. I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink for anybody that wants a specific one, but I think the best thing you can do is serve alongside veterans. So at Travis Manion Foundation, all of our service opportunities are led by veterans and families of the fallen, but they're open to all. Our whole idea is bring the community together to serve together. So you really want to get to know veterans. What is it about joining the military that forms those bonds? I mean, for me, it's about serving alongside somebody. It's about sharing some hardship, making some sacrifice, working towards the same goal. You want to get to know people, do that. So I'll give Travis Manion Foundation that plug. And again, I've said before, there's lots of other great organizations out there, whatever it is that you're passionate about based on the impact that you want to have, but just get out there and do that.
I'll second Josh in regards to those organizations that can help us, and then offer a couple of other things. You mentioned Jocko. I think that his book, Dichotomy of Leadership, is an excellent book to read in regards to just leadership and understanding how veterans' experience have a direct translation into civilian leadership. So I think it's a great book, both for those who served and those who didn't serve, to just gain a little bit of perspective. Outside of that, I'm a big proponent of meditation. I meditate daily. It started in combat when I found myself walking away from my troops about 20 minutes before SP time, just to calm my mind and gather myself, just to get to that place that I needed to get to in order to exhibit that Mamba mentality and go out there and accomplish the mission. So I meditate daily. I started with an app called Headspace that really kind of dumbed it down for me. I'm a simple guy, so it made it very simple for me to understand exactly what I was doing, and I just allowed that practice to evolve. So now I meditate 20 minutes every morning, and typically 10 or 15 minutes at night, and sometimes during the day as well, just to make sure that I stay at optimum levels for myself. I would also add in things like exercise, podcasts outside of military podcasts. I'm a big fan of the Happiness Lab podcast. They have a lot of veterans on there, a lot of people who've gone through traumatic things that really help others digest what they've gone through and hear other people who have gotten to awesome places doing amazing things, who have come from the depths of combat and things of that nature. So I would just tell people to open everything up, whether it's reading books by Jocko, or if you're a nonfiction type, reading a book by The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Like, all those type of things really have the ability to help you heal your wounds and help you reconnect back to society in a positive way.
Lloyd, thank you for sharing those things, and Josh as well. I think at this today, you've added to everybody's toolbox, right? What they could do to be more successful, come out of things and really be stronger, great leaders, and make that positive influence in other people's lives. Lloyd, real quick, you took me back when you said SP. So I remember the SP RP times, crossing over the LOA, so I'm right there with you. I got like 800 acronyms just flying through my brain. Right when you said SP, all that just happened. So, but I want to say thank you to both of you. And I think Ellie's going to hop on here and close us out.
Perfect. Yes, you guys, that was amazing. I feel like I learned so much, and I'm sure our audience did too. And I'll reiterate what John said about the toolbox. I got to go check all these things out now. So thank you both so much for taking the time. The recording will be available for those who tapped in a little late. It'll be on our website, and I'll be sure to share it with you too as well. But thank you guys.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.